Welcome to Beyond the Veil, the channel that unveils the mysteries hidden between myth, history, and legend. Here, we explore what lies behind the stories that have passed through the centuries, because every myth has a grain of truth. If you too are fascinated by the unknown, subscribe and get ready to look beyond the veil of reality. It doesn't need to touch you. It looks at you, and you die. Imagine a creature so deadly it doesn't need to lift a finger to kill. No claws, no bite, just its gaze. That's what makes the basilisk so feared and so fascinating. It's not a monster that chases. It's a monster that waits, in silence, still, with burning, unmoving eyes capable of withering plants, corroding stone, and extinguishing life in an instant. Today, we're not just talking about a mythical beast, but an ancient symbol of fear, power, and invisible death. The basilisk has traveled through the centuries with its fatal gaze, leaving behind an echo of terror and mystery that still haunts us. In this video, we'll uncover its origins, how it evolved in popular culture, and, most of all, why it still lives on in our imagination. To understand the basilisk, we must go back in time, much further than we might imagine. Its name comes from the Greek basiliskos, meaning little king. And that's no coincidence. In the minds of the ancients, this creature wasn't just a monster. It was the king of serpents, a being so powerful that even other reptiles would flee at the mere sight of it. The first written description comes from Pliny the Elder, in the 1st century A.D., in his work Naturalis Historia. Pliny described it as a small serpent with a rigid body and a deadly gaze. According to him, wherever the basilisk slithered, plants withered, stones cracked, and the very air turned foul. No animal dared to approach. But over the centuries, this figure began to shift, becoming more grotesque, more disturbing. In the Middle Ages, the basilisk took on a new form in Christian bestiaries, a hybrid monster, born from a hen's egg laid by a rooster and incubated by a toad or a serpent. A blasphemous origin against nature, a creature that should not exist, born of anomaly and inversion. Its unnatural birth was meant to explain its deadly nature. Something created outside the natural order could only bring death to all living things. Its body became more complex, the head of a rooster, the body of a serpent, reptilian legs, a spiked tail. In some depictions, it even had bat-like wings and a natural crown on its head. But one trait remained constant, the power of its gaze. The basilisk doesn't attack, it doesn't chase, it doesn't roar. It simply stares, and you die. This twisted, hybrid form made it a perfect symbol in medieval bestiaries, an emblem of sin, of pride, of hubris that kills from a distance. A little king who embodies the most dangerous kind of power, the kind you never see coming. And perhaps that's why the basilisk has endured for so long, because it represents a subtle kind of fear, the kind that strikes silently and leaves nothing behind. Who has ever truly seen a basilisk? No one. Yet, everyone seems to know what it looks like. This creature is one of the most fascinating examples of how legend evolves over time, blending real fears, religious symbolism, and collective imagination. In the earliest texts, the basilisk is described as a small, rigid serpent, almost harmless at first glance. But during the Middle Ages, its appearance changes dramatically. It becomes an absurd hybrid, the head of a rooster, the body of a serpent, claws, leathery wings, and a crown-like crest. Each element of this composition carries specific meaning. The rooster's head is no accident. The rooster symbolizes vigilance and authority. But on a creature of evil, it becomes a blasphemous parody of power. The wings, when present, suggest a demonic or infernal nature. And the crest is the most disturbing feature of all, a little king, sovereign of venom and death. But what stands out most in medieval iconography is the gaze. The basilisk does not have ordinary eyes. In manuscripts, they are drawn as blazing, fixed, and disproportionately large. They do not convey life, but condemnation. It is the gaze itself that is the weapon. No other monster in the history of mythology possesses such a passive yet absolute power. It is not the strength of the body, but of the face, a death that looks you in the eye. Some texts also speak of its poisonous breath, capable of rotting fruit on the trees or killing a man from several feet away. The ground where it slithers turns barren, the water undrinkable. But it is the image of the basilisk seeing itself in a mirror and dying from its own gaze that remains one of the most haunting. A powerful symbol, suggesting that absolute evil cannot bear its own truth, that he who kills with a glance is condemned by his own reflection. And so, from a simple snake to a hybrid monster and sovereign of death, the basilisk has taken on countless forms, always with a single purpose: to instill a visceral terror, a terror you don't hear, but see. Monsters fascinate us because they are powerful, but the basilisk inspires fear for a different reason. Its power is silent, motionless, invisible. It doesn't need to roar, chase, or strike. The basilisk kills by simply existing. It is the ultimate monster, one that dominates without ever laying a finger. Its most famous power is, of course, the lethal gaze. In legends, whoever meets its eyes dies instantly. It doesn't matter whether you're armed, a hero, or a farmer. The basilisk's stare bypasses all defenses. They said even stones would crack under its gaze, plants would wither, and the air itself would become corrupted. It is a power that transcends physical strength, a manifestation of destruction without contact, a metaphor for paralyzing fear, for words that wound, for a presence that dominates. Yet the gaze is not its only cursed gift. The basilisk is also a bearer of absolute poison. Wherever it passes, the land becomes tainted, the water putrid, and animals fall dead. In some stories, even metal rusts when brought near, as if its mere existence were toxic, utterly incompatible with life. But perhaps the most chilling detail is this. Unlike many other monsters, the basilisk doesn't want to kill. It does not hunger. It is not driven by vengeance. Its power is intrinsic, natural. Death is simply its aura. And that makes it all the more terrifying. You cannot reason with it. You cannot run. If it looks at you, it's over. So, how do you kill a basilisk? Legend tells of only one true nemesis, the weasel. A small, agile, seemingly insignificant animal, but its scent, they said, was the only poison that could kill a basilisk. Or, in some versions, a mirror. If the basilisk sees itself, it dies, a victim of its own power. And here the symbolism becomes clear. The basilisk represents evil that consumes itself, uncontrolled power that, when forced to face itself, collapses inward. It is the reflection of absolute power, doomed, eventually, to self-destruction. With such a disturbing power and an appearance as absurd as it is terrifying, it was inevitable that the basilisk would leave a lasting mark on modern culture. From a medieval bestiary creature, it has become an icon of fantasy, cinema, and video games, a symbol of silent death, of horror that watches. One of the most famous portrayals is certainly in the Harry Potter saga, where the basilisk hides in the Chamber of Secrets. Here, it returns to its pure serpentine form, enormous, slimy, with eyes that can petrify anyone who dares look. It's a brilliant narrative choice. The horror is never confronted directly, but through mirrors, reflections, and childhood fears. It's a perfect nod to the basilisk of ancient manuscripts, reimagined in a modern, mythic school setting. In the world of video games, the basilisk takes on many forms. In The Witcher, for example, it resembles a winged dragon, an enormous creature combining brute strength and poison, yet it retains the name and its deadly aura. In Dark Souls, the basilisk is a grotesque beast with oversized eyes and the ability to curse the player. It doesn't kill immediately. It slowly ruins you. A brilliant reinterpretation of the gaze that corrupts. Then there's the basilisk in tabletop role-playing games, especially Dungeons & Dragons, where it's famous for its petrifying stare. Often depicted as a kind of magical lizard, the core idea remains. One glance, and it's over. Players quickly learn that facing a basilisk head-on is suicide. What makes the basilisk so captivating in pop culture is its constant evolution. It doesn't matter if it has wings or not, if it's more snake or more dragon. The heart of the myth remains, a being that doesn't need to roar to make you tremble. It looks at you, and you are lost. The basilisk is proof that the most dangerous monsters aren't the ones that chase you, but the ones that stand still and wait. The basilisk is not merely a mythological creature. It is a symbol, a concept, a powerful metaphor that has crossed centuries and cultures to settle into our most ancestral nightmares. When a figure lingers so long in the collective imagination, it means it touches something deep, something universal. Its deadly gaze is the ultimate expression of absolute power. Not a power built through strength or intelligence, but one that is innate, unstoppable, and above all, silent. The basilisk does not wound you. It erases you. It is the terror of sudden death, of divine punishment, of judgment with no escape. In Christian medieval thought, the basilisk was often used as an allegory for mortal sin. Pride, in particular, the most silent and poisonous of the deadly sins. The little king, as its name implies, represents arrogance believing itself untouchable, only to be undone by its own reflection. Not by sword or flame, but by truth. The mirror becomes the judge, and truth the force that annihilates illusory power. In alchemical and occult traditions, the basilisk takes on an even more enigmatic role. It is seen as a force of extreme transformation. Destructive, yes, but necessary. Death before rebirth. Poison as a purifier. Like the Ouroboros or the sacred fire, the basilisk becomes part of a greater cycle. That which destroys to make way for change. But there is also a more intimate psychological interpretation. The basilisk is the gaze that condemns you, but it can also be the reflection of your own inner judgment. That invisible eye watching you, paralyzing you. The voice in your mind that makes you feel unworthy, small, guilty. It is the monster within, fed by shame, remorse, and sorrow. And perhaps that's why this creature fascinates us so much, because it doesn't need words or explanations. It is pure horror, distilled, an ancient force that stares into you and knows. Ancient manuscripts and folk tales are filled with voices, whispers, and legends that speak of the basilisk not as a mere fantasy, but as a real monster, feared and respected as much as a demon. And indeed, for those living in the Middle Ages, the basilisk wasn't just a myth, it was a possibility. One of the most famous stories comes from Rome, deep within its ancient heart. It was said that a basilisk lived in the Cloaca Maxima, the oldest sewer system in the city. Rats were found dead for no reason. Cats vanished. The black waters would boil. People avoided certain streets and priests blessed the manholes. There, according to legend, dwelled the hidden king, invisible and deadly, able to kill with a glance from behind an iron grate. In Poland, in the 16th century, A basilisk was said to have infested a house in the city of Warsaw. No one could enter without collapsing, dead on the floor. It was a young woman, armed with a mirror, who dared to go inside. By reflecting the basilisk's gaze back upon it, she defeated the creature. The house was cleansed. But to this day, it's said the earth beneath it feels different. And even in Italy, these traditions still live on. In the caves of Apulia, they whisper of a hidden serpent king, guarded by an army of lesser snakes. Anyone who dares approach dies in unspeakable agony. Yet some say its blood can cure any disease, if only one were brave enough to claim it. These tales are not just bedtime stories. They are ways to explain the unexplainable: sudden deaths, poisoned air, collective terror. The basilisk was the answer to what could not be seen or controlled. And that's precisely why it claimed such a central role in popular folklore, because it gave a face and a gaze to fear itself. The basilisk is not just a monster of the past. It is a dark mirror, a reflection of an eternal fear, the fear of unseen power, of silent threats, of death that comes with a single gaze. Through the ages, it has shed its skin, taken on new faces, but always remained true to its essence, a solitary king, deadly and deeply symbolic. In legends, it has slain knights, poisoned entire villages, and forced humans to look within themselves. And even today, it still lives, in stories, in video games, in films and dreams. Perhaps not with eyes that turn flesh to stone, but with that same unsettling presence, watching you when you least expect it. But tell me, did you know that a single glance could be fatal? And more importantly, what would you do if you found yourself face to face with the king of serpents? Let me know in the comments. Have you ever read, seen, or dreamt of a basilisk? Or lived through an experience so intense it left you breathless, as if caught in a fatal stare? And if you enjoyed this journey through myth and terror, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and keep your eyes wide open. Because here, on Beyond the Veil, many more creatures are still waiting to be discovered.